In this video, we're going to do something a little bit more decorative with our applique, and you do have a free design that you got with this little mini course here that you can stitch out so you can kind of see something similar. Now this one won't be exactly the same, but it's going to be very, very close. Same concept, I should say. So I have this design up, and like in the previous video, I do have a piece of artwork already, so I'm not going to show you how to just trace around the edge with a run stitch, because you've already seen that in the first two videos on satin stitch border and raw edge border. So if you need to learn how to create an outline, you might go back to that video. But I have this piece of artwork here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert it to a run stitch, and this is going to become my placement stitch. So I have a placement stitch here, which is great, but now I need to do a tack down stitch. So I'm going to copy it and paste it, and I'm going to change the color. And by changing the color, now I have two separate objects, and I'm also going to change this tack down stitch to be a double run, because I like to use a double run just to tack the fabric down a little bit more. Now, just to point out, and I know I haven't mentioned this in every video, but if you are utilizing pre-cut fabric, instead of doing this run stitch, I would take it and convert it to a steel stitch down here, and I would change the density to a 2mm density to lighten it up, and I would change maybe the connection end. You don't have to, but I can change it to a zigzag. And by doing this, it's going to make sure that your pre-cut fabric, it grabs it and attaches it to the regular hooped fabric. So now you're going to have something that's tacked down. And you can do this for regular embroidery too, but this is going to be a decorative element here, and I'll keep it for now. That'll be fine. But one of the things that I'm going to do with this one that'll be different is I want to actually put a pattern on top of the applique fabric. So if I want there to be a pattern on the fabric, what I need to do is I need to apply that pattern at the same time as the tack down stitch, because I want the border stitch to go over the top of it, if that makes sense. So this is where doing custom embroidery or applique becomes a little bit different. This is why you can't necessarily use a applique tool to create this unless you're going to break it all apart, and it's just more effort than what it's worth. So instead, you just create a run stitch for your placement, copy and paste it, create your tack down stitch, and then what you do is you take your tack down stitch and you copy it and you paste it, and now it's still the same color, and that's actually what we want. We want it to be in this same grouping because we want it to do the tack down and this decorative element at the same time. The only thing that I need to do is I need to change this from a steel stitch to a decorative stitch. So for instance, I can come down here in the Floriani software and I can create a motif fill. And a lot of software programs can do that. You might have to convert it to a fill and then change it to a motif. But I'm going to click this this motif fill, and you're going to see that it actually creates this pattern here. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change the color of this tack down. I want it to be something that's going to be visible. So it definitely needs to be something that's a little bit lighter of a color. I know that this won't really go well with it as far as colors go, but it's going to allow you to see the pattern really well. So I'm going to select this motif fill, and what I can do is I can change it to whatever pattern I want. So if I want it to be a different pattern for that decorative stitch, I can do that. And like you saw in the previous one where you're doing a motif border and you can do varying patterns, I can do the same thing here. I can click this mixed patterns and I can hit this drop down and I can choose something else, and it will vary between the two, as you can see there. Now that one didn't look all that great with it, but you can play around with it. There's so many different options inside the Floriani software at least, You can change the size of your pattern as well. So I changed it from a 15 to a 10, so it makes it a little bit tighter. And you just have a lot of flexibility here, and you can quickly make something a lot more decorative. The other thing that you could do is you could actually come in and you could do like a gradient fill if you wanted to. So this is going to go over the top of the fabric, and it's going to make it kind of blend together. So you can blend the fabric in with stitches if you want. The other things are, I mean, obviously down here you have a lot of options. So you could change it to a wave fill. If you do a wave fill, you always have to come in and change the density because it's a little bit too tight. And you can see that by doing that, it's creating this wave pattern. There's a lot of different options that you can use to make a more decorative fill on top of your applique fabric. I just suggest that, you know, the whole point of doing applique is to cover a large area and make it a lot less stitches in a design. So if I'm doing something over the top of it, it's going to be much lighter so that it doesn't weigh it down. And the whole point of doing applique too is to see the applique fabric. So I don't want to cover it all with stitches. So just something to keep in mind. So let's say that I wanted to use this as my decorative element on top of the fabric. Let me go ahead and just change the color. I know it's purple. Let's change it to something different. Let's do like a lighter purple so that you can kind of see it a little bit better. Now what I need is my border. So one of the things that I like to do to get creative is I'm going to take this, I'll take this first one, the run stitch, I'll copy and paste it because I need an outline for my border. And what I'm going to choose to do in this option is I'm going to convert this to a steel stitch. Okay, so a steel stitch, we've seen this before. I'm going to change the width of it to 4, hit apply so it's a little bit thicker. So you can see that I have this nice little satin border, but I'm not going to stop there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste that stitch, and now I'm going to add a decorative element to it. So I'm going to convert this steel stitch. First I'll convert it to a run stitch, and you can see it's in the same color. I'm going to change that to the darker purple, and this is something that you actually see quite a bit right now is, let me go ahead and change that orange though. So I have an orange with a darker purple run stitch that goes down the middle. Now if I was going to use this run stitch, I would change it from a single run to a bean stitch, a 3-ply bean, because I want it to be able to stand out a little bit. But this is something you see quite a bit right now with appliques, is a bean run stitch going down the middle of that satin border. It's kind of popular, but there's even more you can do. So I can take this run stitch now and I can convert it to a motif pattern. And by converting it to a motif pattern, now I have the ability to do a motif over the top of the satin to utilize as my border. Now I'm going to change the color of this. Hopefully it won't look too bad, but it's an orange here. And the reason I'm changing it is because it's pretty hard to see right now with it being purple, and I want to be able to see that there is a motif. And I'm going to zoom in. That'll help as well. So you can see that it's doing this motif over the top. You can change it to whatever motif, pattern you want to use. There's a lot of different options. The one thing that you'll do is you'll just play around with the size of the pattern to make sure that it kind of fits. I like my motif to go a little bit over the satin border, so a little bit wider than what the satin is itself, if that makes sense. So let me just change it to this one, And so right now it's going right to the edge of that satin. I would maybe come in here and change this from a 4 in the pattern size to a 5. And you can see that now it goes and covers the entire thing a little bit more. So if I zoom out, it's not going to look great because it looks like it's pretty dense there. You're seeing a lot of orange. But if you were actually stitching this out, this pattern, you would kind of see a really nice little motif over the top of this satin border. So let's take a look at what this is like doing a slow redraw in the software. And to do that, I'm going to turn off these little images in the background, and let's go ahead and hit play. So first thing it's going to do is it's going to, let me turn that one off too, sorry. First thing it's going to do is do your placement stitch. Then the software's, or the machine's going to stop on your machine. You're going to lay your applique fabric down over the top, and then you're going to go to the second color. The second color is going to do a tack down stitch. In this case, we decided to do a zigzag tack down, and because we were using a pre-cut fabric, and that's the only time you wouldn't want to do this if you're cutting the fabric yourself after the placement. So you would change that to a run stitch if you're going to cut the fabric with scissors after it tacks down. And then it's doing the motif pattern. It did do a run stitch that went around the edge first, or it did that zigzag and it kind of ran a little bit. But it's going to create that fill pattern over the top of the fabric, and it is kind of going over that little zigzag border, which it's no big deal because it's a pretty light zigzag stitch, and this is a light fill. So it's going to do that, and then it's going to do the border. So when it does the border, it's going to do a satin stitch border, and it's going to go all the way around. The next thing it will do is the motif right over the top of this satin border, and that's going to create a very decorative kind of, over the top applique, if you will, and just showing you how creative you can get with your applique, and at the same time showing you how easy it is to get creative with it. And the biggest takeaway from doing this little applique fundamentals series was just to kind of show you how easy it is to actually do applique. Now in this series we're only looking at a single applique, so it's one piece of fabric that is the applique fabric here. We're not layering it, we're not using multiple pieces. That is a little bit more complicated applique. It's not difficult, but until you understand the fundamentals, it would be very challenging to actually create multi-layer applique, or appliques that have two fabrics that butt up against each other. That is definitely something that I like to teach, and it's something that's a part of my Digitizing Masterclass course. The Digitizing Masterclass course is designed to help people learn how to digitize their own designs, going from the basics of understanding the components of embroidery to getting the skills that you need and understanding and theory of digitizing so that it makes sense what you're doing and why you're doing it. Not only that, but you learn how and why things go wrong and how to prevent those things from going wrong. So the Digitizing Masterclass is a full course that is available to everyone. Doesn't matter what software program you have. It doesn't matter what level of a digitizer you are. You could be a beginner, or you can be somebody that's a little bit more intermediate or advanced. There's going to be something for you in that course, and it's going to take you all the way through and teach you the fundamentals, teach you everything you need to know, and then you're going to get a lot of practice because it has a lot of lessons and assignments in it, and there's like, I don't remember how many hours, it was 20 some hours of video training. It comes with a workbook that you can download and print off. It comes with a ton of exercise files and images that you use to create designs. It's a full-on course that you do at your own pace. So it's online. You can work on as fast as you can. If you're interested in learning more about digitizing, I highly recommend checking out the Digitizing Masterclass course, because there's nothing like it. There are other people that teach how to digitize, but there is nothing that goes into the detail that this course does, or that gives you as strong of a foundation as this does. And that's what you need in order to make sense of digitizing. If you don't understand how to structure things like applique, you can't really do much. You're limited on what you can do. But the more you learn about the fundamentals and how and why things work the way that they do, and you stitch out a bunch of samples that you use as a reference so that you can actually see and feel the difference. If you don't ever go through that process, you're kind of digitizing in a trial and error manner, meaning you're going to digitize something, stitch it out, see something wrong, go back to your software, make an adjustment, stitch it again, and you might go through that process 6 or 7 times before you get it where you want. This course is designed to help you understand how to prevent having to do it multiple times, because you're going to get the foundation you need to actually properly plan and execute a design. And so that's what that course is. Check it out at digitizingmasterclasscom. It's digitizingmasterclass.com. And that's just a great tool. Now, one of the things that I did want to do is also show you what some of those advanced type of applique designs are and what makes them kind of difficult. So I'm going to bring up just this Easter basket design here. This is one that was digitized that utilizes 6 different fabrics, and you can see that these butt up against each other. So this is a little bit more complicated. You don't always do a satin border right away. You'll do a placement and you'll tack down a lot of the stitches, but the border might come later. And to kind of show you what I mean by that is, if I'm looking at this design right here, you can see that there's a placement stitch right here, a placement, and then it did a tack down. So this would be one piece of fabric. So it goes and it tacks it down, but then it moves on to the next piece and does a placement stitch and a tack down stitch, right? And then it goes from there and does the next piece, which is a placement stitch and then a tack down stitch. So there's no border that's been done yet. The border comes later. This is just teaching basically how to create these multiple layer embroidery applique designs. And you can see that there's a partial border here, but there still has been no actual border around these. So I just want to show you that it's a lot more complicated, but those are the things that you learn inside of the Digitizing Masterclass, is how to create complex ones like this. So I wanted to show you what this actually looks like stitched out. So I'm going to bring up this little tool here, and I'm going to find that specific design. Okay, where is that one? This was the basket. So this was the artwork that was sent to me that I had to work from. Notice that there's no colors, nothing. I had to kind of improvise and decide how to structure this design, everything. So you can see that this is the artwork and this is the finished design. You can see that there's a decorative fill in here to make it look more like a basket. But you can see these different applique pieces, everything. I mean, it's a pretty cool design that stitches out great. It uses 6 different applique pieces. So that's an example of a complex applique design. And I will show you a couple more because they're kind of fun. They're all different. So this is using a satin border around everything. Then I can show you the sunflower design. The sunflower design is using like a contour fill, and it's a raw edge. So this design is very unique and different, but it's basically a raw edge applique with embroidery on top of the fabric, but the stitches are light enough to show the fabric through the stitches. So let's take a look at what that one looks like. So if I come over here, I'm going to find my sunflower design. This is the artwork that was used, and this was the stitches that were created. So you can see that it's kind of open fill areas. It's letting the fabric show through. It's just a different style of digitizing, and it's very unique. And so these are the kinds of things that you learn how to do. Here's one that was a patriotic hat applique, and it's multiple pieces of applique. I can bring that one up to show you as well that the artwork was like this, and this is before a bow and stuff was put onto this one, but you can see the different fabric. It didn't have to match it exactly. That's a great thing about applique. It's whatever you choose for your fabric, that's what kind of decorates it. That's what gives it its appeal. And the same applique design can look totally different based on the fabric that you choose to use. So let's come in here again. And this one was a lot of fun, and this one was really difficult to figure out. This was a raw edge applique design that is using applique for the rose, the petals, the little stems, leaves, sorry. Mine went blank there. And then you have this sewing machine, and then this is actually applique as well. So this one, because it's raw edge, you had to be very careful about when you did each piece, because you wanted to make sure that one piece covered another because it had the raw edge. So let's take a look at what this one looked like. Now this one, there was more pieces that were added, so I didn't bring up the right design. I apologize. Well, it's the same design, but just more pieces. So let me come in here and I'll show you what that looks like. Here's this one here. You actually, we did decide to take it away. This was the original artwork again, and then this was the raw edge applique that was done. So it's really cool, very different. Now personally, if I was stitching this one out again, these stitches on the flower and the petal or the leaves here, I would do those in black. And the reason is it's going to make that flower just pop out even more. You're going to see the stitches better. In person, you can see it better than what you can see it in this picture. The in person is it's much cleaner. You can see the detail a little bit more, but you can see that there's multiple pieces of fabric, and this was a very fun design. It was very challenging to figure out the exact right way to do it, because you have all the stitches on top of the applique, and it being raw edge, it just makes it a little bit more complicated. So let's take a look at some other ones that I've done. These were all done last year. I did them with a friend, Debbie Homer, who was using these in projects that she shared with her club. So this is like just kind of like a leprechaun hat type thing. So you can see this was the original artwork. There's a lot of liberties taken in doing designs. You can see that I didn't use exactly the same things. I did modify things a little bit, and but that's okay, because that's kind of what you do. And this one added Kiss Me, I'm Irish. You don't see the I there, but it's there. So this was another one that was kind of fun, using a motif fill over the top of the applique fabric, using stitches on top of it, using kind of decorative pieces. This is also one that you could use a different color of these stitches here, and it would show up more, and that's just a personal preference on whatever you want to do. So this one was this is a one piece of applique fabric that's kind of going through this entire green area right here, and then again right here, and then you have black right here, this fabric, and then another piece of fabric there. So these are ones that butt up against each other. And again, you don't do the border necessarily So you can see this is the one piece of applique, and it tacks it down with that decorative fill. And then it does some decorative pieces. Here's the next piece of applique, and it's doing those tack downs with those decorative stitches, but there's no border yet. See, it's just the tack downs. The next one, it did a placement and tack down, but it didn't do a border. And then it just kind of does its decorative stitches, and at the end, it's going to grab everything with a border stitch. So it's just very different when you're doing layered applique, but it's a lot of fun. So this one was another one that was fun to do, and I did modify the original art quite a bit. But this is using multiple layers of fabric for the applique, and this one, because it's small, there wasn't enough room to make it applique like we've talked about before. It just wasn't a good candidate for applique, so this was using regular stitches. Now this one, same thing, this area right here wasn't quite big enough to use fabric, so it's using a fill stitch. And this area was big enough, so it actually uses fabric. So just wanted to show you that you kind of decide what pieces will or will not work for applique. And let's take a look at what this one looked like. Let's grab it. And you can see this is the original artwork, and I didn't feel like it was going to show off the fabric enough to do it like this with stitches over the top of it. And then this one was a little bit different, having that go across the balloon there. But so what I did is mine are quite a bit different. You can see that there's a couple pieces of fabric here. It's using 2 pieces of fabric, but it's actually 4 applique pieces that were done at different times. And then this one you have applique fabric here, here, and here. And then this one doesn't have any applique, it's just stitches. But this one was a lot of fun. And again, if you watch it stitch out, you're not putting a border on after you tack it down. You wait till the end to kind of finish everything off. So these are, again, things that are a lot more complicated, but these are the types of things you learn in the Digitizing Masterclass. So here's another one that was a lot of fun. This was a snowman. So again, it had multiple pieces of fabric. You can see right here I have a fill stitch in here and a fill stitch here and fill stitches in right here. And the reason is these just aren't that big of pieces for applique. It would have been complicated to make these applique pieces, so it was just better to use fill stitches in these areas. And let's take a look at what that looked like finished and look at what the original artwork was. So this is the original artwork, and this is it finished. You can see this is white fabric here that has a little pattern to it. You can't see it well in the photo, but did a first stitch for a fill here to make it look a little more fuzzy, to make it look a little bit more realistic. But it came out great. It was a fun project. The birds came out really well too, and that one was fun. And so let's take a look at this last one. This is the turkey design. So this one was multiple pieces of applique, and I'll show you what that looked like finished. So this one I get to show you a full project here. So this was the artwork. This is the stitched out design with the multiple pieces of layered applique, and this is what it was actually used for. All those designs that I showed you were used in this project where each month you would switch out the design. So it's kind of fun project to work on. The one I didn't show you is I didn't get to show you this one or this one. So this one was a fun one too. It says Mom, and this was what it looked like stitched out with multiple pieces of applique. And same with this one. This one was a lot of fun. This was using motif borders. kind of like what we saw in the previous videos. So this is using a lot of decorative stitches on top of the material and using a bunch of different ways of adding a border to that applique and making it a little bit more decorative. So those are the fun things that you can do with applique, and you can use your own imagination. You can see that this was using different elements that I just didn't think would work well, because that would be kind of difficult to stitch out if this was like satin stitches because of the holes. So instead I chose to use a motif border. So those are some of the things you can do. These are more complicated applique designs, but I wanted to show you what that looked like. So after you master the basics, then you can really get creative. And as you can see, there's a lot of different ways and techniques, utilizing contour fills, just all sorts of different ways of doing applique. So I hope that you learned a lot in this little fundamentals of applique. And if you want to learn more, again, you can go to digitizingmasterclasscom and you can join the Digitizing Masterclass course. It is a one-time purchase and you have lifetime access to the content and all the videos. And it's an amazing program that I hope that you'll take advantage of if you want to learn how to digitize designs or do even more complicated applique designs like you see here. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this little series. Again, my name is DJ Anderson, and it's been fun to present this to you.